Tax the rich. Sometimes a few simple words is all it takes to set things off.
We cannot afford to continue this level of income and wealth inequality.
Do you want a symbolic high tax rate on the high income people to win votes politically? Or do you really want more tax revenue coming into the government?
Good times are to their benefit. Crises are even more to their benefit. They get further and further and further ahead.
I'm just asking you to practice what you preach. Let me just ask you one other question here.
I do practice what I preach.
Well, you don't. You're telling other people to send their money to the government, and you're not.
Tension between wealthy elites and everyone else is certainly nothing new. But in the 2020s, with a widening income gap, rising inflation, high gas prices, astronomical home values, offshore tax havens, the billionaire space race, and a shrinking middle class, the question of what governments should do about the ultra-rich has become a central one in economic policy. Recently, President Joe Biden pitched a twofold solution for America. The first part is a minimum tax rate of at least 20% on the wealthiest Americans on their full income, including unrealized appreciation of assets or capital gains. Taxing unrealized appreciation is important to remember, since capital gains are normally taxed after you sell an asset and collect a profit. The second part is a separate tax at death on most previously untaxed gains from appreciated assets, even if the assets are not sold.
Our income tax is progressive, that as you make more income, you pay higher taxes, higher tax rates. However, our income tax fails to pick up all of what people might think of as income. And our income tax system does not tax appreciation as you go along.
Although Biden's plan has been dubbed the Billionaire tax, it actually targets households with a net worth of $100 million or more. So what are some of the arguments for and against this idea? Let's start with the ones in favor. Billionaires often pay lower tax rates than the average American. Warren Buffett once famously pointed this out, comparing his own rate to his secretary, Debbie Bosanek. In 2010, Buffett's income tax rate was 17.4%, while Bosanek's was 35.8%.
I think it should be a defining issue. Debbie works just as hard as I do, and she pays at twice the rate I pay. I think that's outrageous.
The Biden White House looked at the Forbes 400 wealthiest households, and they determined that if you counted unrealized gain as income, the effective tax rate by these 400 households was about 8%. And the effective tax rate for a typical worker in the US, income tax rate is closer to 22%.
Billionaires can also borrow money against their accumulated gains on assets without triggering capital gains. This allows individuals to not declare income and not be obligated to pay income taxes. Elon Musk is a good example of this. A ProPublica investigation showed between 2014 and 2018, Musk's wealth grew by $13.8 billion, but he paid $455 million in income taxes during that same period. In 2018, he paid zero federal income taxes, but in December 2021, in a Twitter clapback to Senator Elizabeth Warren, Musk claimed he would be paying more taxes than any American in history that year. He later tweeted his tab was above $11 billion. The bill was so big because he exercised millions of stock options, which are taxed at a high ordinary tax rate. If the White House were able to regularly claim taxes from billionaires, they believe the deficit would be reduced by $360 billion in the next 10 years. The plan would also tax billionaires annually as they go, just like everyone else. Finally, collecting annual taxes on unrealized gains would reduce the ability of the ultra-rich to hide money in tax shelters or to pass down assets to heirs with gains never being taxed.
These assets can be passed on to their heirs with what is known as a step-up in basis. And the heirs take the assets at their full fair market value, and this massive amount of appreciation that potentially should be taxed vanishes.
Now for some of the arguments against the proposal. First, calculating how to tax unsold assets is very complicated, especially when some assets, such as fine art, are hard to value, and publicly traded stocks can go down as well as up.
If we rely on a deemed sale and not a true sale, well, we have no sales price as reference. We have to guess what the asset's going to be worth if there were a sale. Second, when you lack an actual sale, the taxpayer who is deemed to make the sale might not have the dollars to pay the tax. And so that imposes a liquidity barrier to trying to squeeze out taxes from someone who hasn't sold anything. Now, the Biden billionaire tax tries to make allowances for both of these difficulties.
The American tax system is already very complicated and difficult to administer. Adding another level of bureaucracy to calculate these new taxes could make things even more inefficient. Biden's tax would target the biggest job and wealth creators in America. This could then affect their ability to promote more economic and technological growth. Again, Elon Musk is cited as an example to support this argument.
He took the excess capital from creating a brand new industry in electric cars and went into space in a way that the government never could. He beat them at their own game. We need people like that.
Finally, the ability for the federal government to tax property is constitutionally questionable, as this is typically the realm of state and local taxes.
The US Constitution limits the type of taxes our federal government can impose. And it's unclear whether Biden's billionaire tax can fall within the safe harbor of our income tax, or whether it would be viewed as a tax on wealth or property. And that generally cannot be done under our Constitution.
As for whether or not this proposed tax will be enacted, the chances are slim. Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, whose vote would be needed to pass the billionaire plan, has already said he will not support taxing unrealized gains. However, even if the plan does not go ahead, the notion that the ultra-rich have to pay their fair share is a message we'll likely keep hearing on the campaign trail heading into the midterm elections.